You can't go to the table every negotiation and get the bare minimum. That's what you can't do.
You're listening to Inside Acting, a podcast dedicated to demystifying the inner and the outer game of success in the entertainment industry. I'm Trevor Algatt.
And I'm AJ Meyer. And in episode 292, we have part two, that's a lot of twos, of my chat with actor, IAP alum, and can we call him a union activist? Maybe we can. I'm sure we can. Kevin E. West. In part two, Kevin talks to us about the glaring issues of being technologically behind the times, what he thinks would create the biggest and fastest change in terms of contract negotiations, and what you, our listeners, what you can do right now to make yourself a more informed actorCEO. We're all running our own business here, people. All that and more coming up in episode 292. Stay with us.
Support for this episode of Inside Acting is brought to you in part by Rehearsal Pro, the current, newest, most awesomest version of Rehearsal yet, and it's an essential app for actors, and it's now available, easy for me to say, right now in the iTunes App Store. So guys, if you've heard of this app, have you downloaded it yet? If you haven't, what is wrong with you? Well, if you haven't, it means you don't have an iPhone, because it is for iOS devices only. But if you do have an iOS device, and many of us do, this is the app to get if you want to learn your lines, be off book for your auditions, explore your character, make stronger choices, and do a whole bunch of other cool stuff. Go to rehearsal.pro/IAP right now to learn about all the kick-ass features in this newest version of Rehearsal. It's a groundbreaking app, and it's designed by actors, for actors. Once you get a taste of it, you will be using it for every single audition, every single line learning opportunity you have. It is indispensable. That's rehearsal.pro/IAP.
I like most awesomest version.
Most awesome. Yeah, I thought of that on the fly too. That was that was total improv. I mean, I'm not as rusty as I thought it was.
You're doing it live.
Yeah.
You're doing it live. I actually used it today.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, since we're on the rehearsal train, I got a last-minute audition for a theater piece, three-page scene. Got it last night, had an audition today, so I used it literally in the car on the drive to the audition in order to get almost entirely off book by the time I got into the room.
You know, I think that's actually how David came up with the idea for it. He was in the exact same situation as you. He was in the car and he was using the voice memo app to rehearse his lines with himself.
Right, and it doesn't repeat.
Yeah, and so he was like, why isn't there an app that does this? And that was sort of the genesis of it. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to hear that it kind of came full circle and that you're using it in the same exact situation that he wished he had it.
And for this version, when he was still in the sort of like, not beta, but just like first launch phase, I actually sent him some email feedback because one of the things that I noticed was it was overtaking my Waze app and my other maps applications for turn-by-turn navigation. So it wasn't as safe to do it while I was driving because I couldn't hear my next turn. So I sent him an email through the feedback thing in the application and said, hey, it'd be really great if it ducked, if there was audio ducking, so that the audio ducked underneath things like Waze and Google Maps and Apple Maps. And he did it, or they did it, or whatever the people he works with for the app engineering, the app design, they changed it. So now when I have my turn by turn turned on and I'm going to the audition, I can hear the turn by turn nav will come up over the recording.
Awesome. It's another reason that app is just absolutely a must have. Every time I've gone into a room, having used that app to learn my lines, and what I do is I'll just put it on repeat and you can turn the screen off and stick it in your pocket and it just repeats over and over and over. And so you just hear the lines over and over and over. And I'll just like walk down to the store or something. And it's like a 15-minute walk from my place. And by the time I get back from the store, I am off book. Or I'll be doing dishes. Like you mentioned this the other day, AJ, that while you're, doing dishes or ironing your shirts or whatever it is around the house, you just have that on repeat in your ears. And man, is it effective. It is just such a great way. And once you're off book, every actor knows that's when the real work begins.
Yes.
Because then you get to play. You're confident with the lines. And going into a room with that kind of confidence is just amazing. And I haven't found a better solution, honestly, for learning your lines quickly and effectively than Rehearsal Pro. And guys, if we had found a better solution, you would hear about it. Like we're not so easily bought and sold or anything like that. So just know that we believe in this thing. That's why we bring it up every episode. Big, huge welcome to one of our newest members, Mr. Aaron Scotch. Thank you for joining us inside the membership. Aaron joined us as a monthly contributor. So not only, Aaron, are we very happy to have you as part of the family, but we also are very grateful to have the increased financial support to keep the lights on and make this thing happen. As you guys know, making this podcast is not free. And every dollar, literally every single dollar, goes right back into producing this thing and paying for production costs and paying for the various resources that get poured into this thing every single week. So, Aaron, thank you so much, both for your participation and your support and your paying it forwardness. We really, really appreciate that. And we also wanted to mention a quick reminder for the Q3 review that's going to happen live in person in Culver City on October 1st at 3 p.m., facilitated by none other than Jasmine Bristow, who is sort of a budding life coach. Very, very cool to have Jasmine offering that to the community. Again, Sunday, October 1st at 3 p.m., planned for about 2 hours of an intimate gathering, setting goals, looking at what might be stopping you from achieving your goals, getting some personalized feedback and some really high level, like emotional intelligence coaching on how to really dig deep and dismantle some of those discussions and conversations between the various, stupid people in our heads that frantically derail us from doing things that we know will contribute to our personal evolution. So that's the kind of stuff that you can look forward to. RSVP link is on the website in the show notes for this episode. That's to the Facebook event, and you can also RSVP if you're not on Facebook. Just shoot us an email, support@insideacting.net, and we'll make sure we get you added to the list. So on the outline here, you just wrote "Holy Auditions, Batman."
It has been so crazy. I'm not trying to brag or anything. I haven't booked anything, so there's nothing to brag about. But I can't remember the last time I was this busy with auditions. It's been nuts, and I still have a full-time job, or now I have a full-time job since May. So. Making it all work has just been crazy. I had a commercial audition on a Saturday. The callback for it was on the following 2 days later on Monday, which was yesterday. And I had to take a 3-hour lunch to make it to 200 South La Brea and back. And then during the day, I got back from the callback. My manager calls me again. I'm like, oh, did I get pinned for this commercial? No, another audition, the one I mentioned that I was using Rehearsal Pro for. Today, the next day, same thing. I had to leave work, take a 3-hour lunch to go and come back. So I'm just crossing my fingers that I haven't used up all of my, political points at work, because, they've been so good about supporting me with the work-life balance thing. But it's been crazy. I was putting myself on tape for another musical theater audition this morning, and I ended up being 10 minutes late to work. So 10 minutes late to work, plus I left for lunch, took a 3-hour lunch, and came back. I just, it's been challenging to keep the sort of feelings of guilt at bay. That's been challenging. Getting prepared for the auditions has been challenging. As you know, I got some support from you because one of them was an animation voiceover audition. Then there was 3 musical theater auditions I put myself on tape for. 2 auditions that were for television shows. One where I spoke Pashto. One where I spoke Arabic.
Wow. Okay, so I'm doing the math here in my head. That's 7 or 8 right there.
In the last 2 weeks.
Dude.
Yeah, it's been crazy. And like I said, it's not anything to brag about. And I was actually thinking about a bunch of different things. For instance, I ended up turning down a role on a a brand new primetime television show that's coming out that hasn't come out yet. It's coming out next week or this week. Because they didn't offer me the role I auditioned for. They offered me another role, which was, again, one line. And the last time this happened, I took the gamble and I turned down the role, and Bill Paxton died, and Training Day was taken off the air. This time, I'm hoping that the show is successful and runs long enough that if they like me, they'll bring me in again, and hopefully I will book something bigger. So it's always a gamble. So that happened. And then the other thing I was thinking about is, you and I want to ask you about this, Trevor, because I'm really interested to hear your take on this. You're such a deep thinking, deep feeling, deep connecting type of person. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this. You and I and our guests have talked a lot about booking the office and making the connections in the room and building relationships. It's even part of our inside acting culture, right? Build relationships, not networks. All but one of the auditions that I just mentioned were on tape. Wow. All but one. Well, actually two if you count the one I had today.
Self-taped, you mean? So you did them on your own?
Correct.
Wow.
And then today I was in the room with the casting director, sure, so able to book the room, great, but I was on tape for whoever the decision makers were, director, producer, etc. So my question is around the building of that relationship. It kind of feels like these tapes just go off into the ether, and the only feedback that I get, and I have gotten it, is when the same casting director asks me to put myself on tape for something else, or calls me in for something else, or considers me for something else. Then I'm like, okay, great. I've booked the office. I've made a fan of that casting director. So, for instance, 2 out of the 3 musical theater auditions that I was just mentioning, same casting director who I've auditioned for a couple of times before. What was the other one? There's a couple other quote unquote repeat customers, right, over the last 3 weeks or so. Right. Yeah. So I am getting that feedback. But sometimes I've gone weeks, months. I've heard of actors going years before being called in by the same casting director again. So it might feel like you're not getting that feedback. So my question is around this whole booking the office, building relationships. Do you think that them not getting to experience you as a person, as your authentic I'm in this role saying these lines self, is a hindrance to that? Because I'm starting to feel like it is, because I'm not connecting with anybody but Ben Whitehair, who I adore and love, but he knows I'm a good actor. He knows I'm a good person, I think. I don't know. You might have to ask him. No, don't ask him. Don't ask him that. But do you get what I'm saying, Trevor? What are your thoughts on that? On the connection of reaching out through the damn screen. They're not really learning it, unless you have an extended slate or something. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling now.
Well, I'll say 2 things. Number one is what you're doing is clearly working. You said you've had a few repeat customers and you're auditioning like crazy. So people trust both your representation and your reputation, or rather they have no reason to say no to taking a look at you. So whatever you're doing is working. So there's that. And the second thing I would say is a question back to you. Since what you're doing is working, it's worth keying in on what the experience you are intending to create with each and every taped audition is. When you say, when you put yourself on tape and you're running around in your day job and these long lunches and you've got a million things coming at you, you're still doing something right. So I would ask you, I guess, to describe, when you put yourself on tape, what's the experience that you want to create for these casting directors, which are in effect your customers?
Wow. That question would probably take longer to answer than we have time for. I will say it is definitely something that Ben and I have talked about a lot. Is, especially when you're putting yourself on tape for television, it's the closest you have to being able to mimic the medium that you're actually trying to book. So we do our best to create as close a proximity to what it would be like on the day, including things like eyeline, pausing for edits, simulating props. If it's a comedy or a comic scene, entering and exiting the frame. Little technical tricks that we have sort of figured out over time through trial and error and being on set and talking to other actors and talking to each other and watching our self-tapes and figuring out why does that work and why doesn't that? And like I said, Trev, there's a caveat to all of this, which is I haven't booked any of them yet. So I'm not necessarily an expert. Yeah, I've booked The Room, but it hasn't yet been, the nail on the head. I laughed the other day. You and I recorded a week ago, last episode, and I was talking about all the auditions I had, and you said, should I guess the blacklist? And I was like, ha, ha, ha. That's really funny because, statistically, you probably would have been right. I actually got a self-tape audition for the blacklist the next day.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I meant to text you to say, like, hey, buddy, thanks for sourcing me an audition. Yeah. That's probably a baker's dozen for that show for me.
Yeah.
No joke.
Yeah.
So it feels like, well, okay, like I'm booking The Room without stepping foot in it. Although, I had one or two auditions with them before I left New York. But I don't know. I guess I'm just craving. It's probably a function of craving the human connection of what we do. I had a really cool audition today with a casting director in a room. You know what I mean? And yes, there was a camera there for director, producer, whoever's going to be the decision maker later. But we had a really cool connection. It was so last minute. I didn't have a headshot with me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. She's like, just tell me about yourself because, I don't have a resume in front of me. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we just got to talking about, who I am. And that's not something you can do on a tape. You can do a slate, but slates are usually specific.
Well, why do you think they're asking you that kind of thing? Why do you think they're asking you to, talk about yourself and things like that?
Well, that can only be good news. That means that she wants to get to know me. That to me, that means I booked The Room already. Because otherwise it'd be like, okay, thank you so much.
Right.
They had people, there was 6 people in the waiting room when I walked out. They don't have time for that. So the fact that she took the time, she was spending the time to get to know me, that means I booked The Room. I know that. And that's great. And that's in the moment feedback. What I'm saying is when you're sending in all these self-tapes, I don't know. To me, it feels like maybe it's taking away a little bit of the human connection element of the business. And I don't know, I think we've brushed on that before, but I don't know if we've really gotten down and dirty and talked about it before.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would argue that, this is obviously increasing the pace that casting happens at. It's things are just now happening at warp speed compared to what they used to do. And so people are I feel like if I was a casting director and I had, 1,400 submissions. Well, let's just be conservative. Let's say 300 submissions if I went through people's representation and whatnot. I've got 300 submissions, 300 tapes to go through. I'm probably going to go with the representation that I know and have a relationship with of some kind first. I'm going to look at those people first. Let's say that narrows it down to 50 or 60, right? So and let's say each audition is, again, conservatively, a minute at the most. There's no way that auditions are ever that brief. So, but let's say I've got, an hour before I've got to send along my top 10 picks for this particular part. So I've got to weed through 60 different auditions in an hour, which means I only really have a chance to look at the first 10 to 30 to 45 seconds of each one. So what I'm looking for as a casting director, and I'm not a casting director, so big disclaimer right there. But if I were, what I feel like I'll be looking for is confidence, poise, professionalism. Can they act? Obviously. And I feel like when you're putting yourself on tape, more than anything else, that's your relationship builder. Those are the things that you're communicating right off the bat, that this person can go, oh, thank God, I've got a professional here, all the way back to Michael Kostroff's interview. If you're interviewing heart surgeons, they're not asking permission about where they can cut open your chest. And is it okay if I cut here? Is this okay if I go in and try this? It's like, no, you're the professional here. I'm the one. I'm deferring to you. And if you have even the temerity to ask that question, like, I think I'm going to need to go somewhere else. And so many actors do that. They're not that explicit about it, but it has to do with their presentation. How they show up, how they stand, how they slate, how they move through the scene, how they do all the things that you just described, and exiting and entering frame, miming, the props and whatnot. And I feel like you've done so many of these on-camera, self-taped auditions now that you are conveying that really, really well. And so you may not be booking, consistently quite yet, but the fact that you've done 7 or 8 auditions in the last 2 weeks alone, that's more than every other day. I mean, that's awesome. And reputation, I feel like, travels really, really quickly and really well in this industry. And so I can't imagine that somewhere at some point your name has come up in a room between various casting directors or between friends or over drinks with something like that. And people are talking about how stressful their job is and how they've got to cast all these things. And somebody said, like, oh, have you seen AJ Meyer? Yeah, he's great. I haven't brought him in yet, but every time I get a tape from him, I watch it. I know he's going to be, he's going to be great. And I always pass his name along. So I feel like the fact that you're getting so many auditions is proof that something like that is happening on some level in some way, shape, or form. And that you're communicating that you are a professional on every level just with your presentation. You've practiced enough now that you've got that. So I would say that's the new relationship building of putting yourself on tape. No, you can't connect with people and have a conversation and talk about, funny cat memes. You can't do that if you're just putting yourself on tape. But you're cutting right to the chase and you're showing people like, hey, I'm a pro. I'm here to do a job. You've got a job to do. Let's make this happen. We've all got shit to do. So I feel like that's at work. And the last thing I want to say before I shut my gob here is I remember reading this in The Success Principles, which is a book by Jack Canfield that is a book that completely changed my life. And it was a quote from Kevin Sorbo in that book. And I was able to ask Kevin this when we interviewed him years ago. But I think if I remember correctly, I didn't ask him this on the air. I think I may have asked him off the air. But the quote was that for every 200 auditions he went on, he booked maybe one. Maybe one out of every 200. So that's half a percentage rate of success. That is a 99.5% failure, quote unquote failure rate. But as Tony Horton has said, that's just practice, for the times that you do get paid for it, right? So I think of that, and I think he's a talented actor. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's not hard to look at, that's past his, physical prime, if you want to go by Hollywood standards, and is still working consistently as an actor because he's got talent and he's got relationships. And if a guy like that is booking or seeing, quote unquote success only 0.5% of the time, even when he was in his prime and he was muscle bound and super dashing handsome, cover of a romance novel, right out of that, I think that it's just worth keeping all of these things in perspective. And this is not me trying to coach you right now, but it's stuff that's coming up for me as I'm hearing you talk about it. I'm like, man, this industry is such a head trip. But if we keep all of this in perspective and just keep the long game in perspective, this is how it happens. This is how the game is played. And every single actor who has had any sort of longevity in their career, enjoyed any sort of longevity, has a story that sounds a lot like the one that you are writing right now. And now we have it against the backdrop of this technology and this sort of situation. But my gut says that you're doing everything right and that you're building those relationships, again, just to bring it home, with your presentation and your poise, and you communicate professionalism with all of the 92% of your body language that doesn't come out of your mouth.
Yeah, thanks for that, man. I didn't, when you mentioned the professionalism thing, just that word, that really landed. So I get, yeah, makes sense. Like just doing good, both craft wise and technical wise, good work on the self tape. That in and of itself displays a certain amount of professionalism and shows them that you're there playing the game, as you put it.
Yeah,
so,
well,
I really appreciate that.
At the end of the day, they just want somebody they can trust. Someone's going to make them look good. You know, we've said this ad nauseum on the show, but that's really what it comes down to. Do you want to work with this person? And if I recommend this person, are they going to embarrass me, or are they going to make me look really good at what I do? And that's what they want. That's what they're looking for. And they can get that in the first 5 seconds of your self-tape. They get that the first 5 seconds you walk into the room. You don't need to talk about anything else. They get it right away. And I think if you can nail that, and you've done so much emotional intelligence work, and you're so committed to self-development that, and I know you, I see you all the time. I mean, when you walk into a room, everybody in the room sits up a little bit straighter. So you've got that part down, AJ. So I can't imagine it's not coming through on the self-tapes as well.
All right, I will trust you.
Man, we've talked this to death. I will
choose to trust you. Yeah, we have. Let's move on. We get to hear from our sponsor before we jump into the interview. But as you know, support for this episode of Inside Acting is also brought to you in part by vo2gogo.com, the award-winning voiceover training system and winner of Backstage's Reader's Choice Award for Best VO Training 4 years in a row. Visit vo2gogo.com/start for a free getting started in voiceover online class that'll help you add voiceover to your acting portfolio. That's vo2gogo.com/start.
Cool, man. I'm feeling a little self-conscious now. I hope I didn't like create the experience of like me trying to like tell you how to do things. Not at all. It was actually quite inspiring, and I really, it's with everything that's been going on, I have been experiencing a bit of overwhelm. So that was honestly a great reminder and a nice like pick me up. So thank you. Oh, good. I'm glad. Cool, man. Well, I've said it so many times before. It's only a matter of time, man. It is only a matter of time when you're gonna have to be turning down jobs because you're already working on something else, and they're going to be trying to schedule around your other gigs.
Yes.
Get ready, because it's coming.
Because it's coming.
All right, that's a P90X reference, just in case you were wondering. Let's jump into part 2 with Kevin. I'm so excited to listen to this.
Yeah, you should be. It's really good. We've got a couple of listener questions, but we ran out of time this week. We'll get to them in a future episode. But enjoy this, guys. Part 2 with Kevin. Just more of the greatness from part 1.
I want to ask one more sort of follow-up question to this. Is the same thing, maybe you're not even working on it, I don't know, but is the same thing happening, or is the same thing possible in film and television contracts? Because you're talking mostly, it sounds like you're talking mostly about commercial contracts right now, but in terms of, and what made me think of it was you were like saying, the client is holding the purse strings. If you went to a producer or producing entity on the film and television side, would you have similar results, or are the non-union players in that space just not as much of a juggernaut?
You are correct. Certainly the concept of working off the card, or even if you drift into the FICOR conversation, which I could do an entire show with you on in terms of the misunderstanding about what FICOR actually was as a Supreme Court decision, which actually was not related to, was never supposed to be used as a union busting tool, but that's what it's being used in our union, because we do negotiate with multiple employers. and our sort of skill set is so subjective from one hiring person to another. But setting that aside, when you look, you are correct that certainly going towards scripted, again, not voiceover, because you can do voiceover out of your house by yourself, just like we're doing right now. But in terms of scripted on camera, non-union is not as much at play because maybe the skill set difference is a little more obvious or a little more glaring. However, what we aren't getting from the theatrical side is we certainly are not getting wages that match sort of cost of living index in certain ways. And there are certain things that are never going up. But also, I still believe that we have the same issue, AJ. What exists much more in theatrical to me is we don't do a good enough job with technology, going all the way back to what you first said, in being able to present the proper amount of information in favor of our argument. No different than the argument you get in the voting thing when you get your voting pamphlet and it says argument in favor of, rebuttal against the rebuttal. Right. It's like the metrics that we do not gather, the level of information that we do not have to push on that from a theatrical standpoint is disappointing. However, I will even go one step further. And to answer your question, yes, I have I had 2 pages of bullet points theatrically, because theatrical is most of my career. I've only done like 30 commercials in my career. I mean, I know people have done 15 in 1 year, but I've done 50 some television shows and a bunch of films. And as we both know, in the world we live in today, the modified agreement films, from short to ultra low to modified low to low, and even films that are actually union that are between, say, 2.6 million and 7 million. What's going on with those? Again, you can ask any ultra low budget producer, and I have several friends who do this all the time. And some of the clauses and things that exist in that contract are just so short-sighted, it's absurd. And you look at our new media agreement, it's absurd. Granted, it was done on the fly back then, but that's just it, is it shouldn't have been done on the fly. And then what's been renegotiated since it was its first inception, AJ, is just not well thought out. And I don't know if it's because the people doing this really don't understand technology. I don't know if it's because they don't have the right people consulting them with regards to what the hell's really going on out there in, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram land. I don't really know. But either way, it just simply isn't based on being thorough. And part of that's manpower, part of that's money, part of that's budgets. A lot of those things, AJ.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Is what is it money? Is it the things that they can't do? Is it a lack of foresight? But I guess it's a combination of all of the above.
It is, but I mean, come on, man. Between you and me and the Fence Post, give me $100,000 and 4 22-year-olds, man, and I can design a SAG website in 30 days that would put the one that we currently have to shame. So it's, again, I'm not, like I said before, sometimes it seems to be the voices that make the most noise but don't necessarily serve the most people. And it's terribly, terribly depressing. And, let's just go with this. There could be, just using this, there could be a contraption known as a partial residual, partial buyout hybrid. That's a possible conversation, is it not, AJ?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, anything's possible.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not saying that I will never. I'm a proud union member. I will never be drifting to try and in any way, shape, form encourage non-union work. But if you can encourage something that is a signatory project legally, and still pays some degree of residuals package, but based on what type of spot and based on its usage, which again is what commercials are, and today, quite frankly, AJ, it's what television shows are. I mean, what Netflix is not necessarily going to be the only model, and it's no longer a new model. It certainly is a damn model. And so, when you talk about what platform that is and that it's a monthly service and it can be watched on anything, it's like, well, Netflix has a really big, pretty building in Hollywood over there, and I have friends that work there, so they're not hurting. So why are contracts not applicable to how well they're doing? No different than Sony Film or Universal Film.
Yeah.
So to me, it's metrics, it's intelligence, and it's foresight. And yes, you are limited on staff and you are limited on budget. But my God, what is more important than something else? And when you negotiate every 3 years, man, you just can't go to the table every negotiation and get the bare minimum. That's what you can't do. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have and have had going on for at least 10 or 12, about 8 voting cycles from what I've seen since I got here. And some of it's related, AJ, to our biggest stars. You know, our biggest stars have to be willing to walk off set. That's how SAG started 72 years ago, whatever it is. That's how it started. The 6 biggest stars of the day got up and walked off and said, "Have a nice day." No different than Norma Ray standing up in the Sally Field, union. I mean, that's how it started. And they have become such corporations, and we have become such a 99.1% industry, no different, like you said, than America, that a lot of our superstars, they don't need agents. They're just corporations all by themselves because they make 15, 20 million a film. And until you have the other side be in fear, legitimate fear, that their business can come to a halt on any given day, if 200 stars decided on a given day at a certain time to just simply walk off set together, until they know that's possible, we're probably going to be at a disadvantage, putting everything else aside. And I don't think they're afraid of that right now.
Wow, yeah. Oh, it's crazy. It shouldn't, but that seems so pie in the sky. It shouldn't, but it does.
No, it should. You're correct. It shouldn't at all. As you said earlier, you brought up communication workers. You can go to the textile workers union. You can go to all telecom unions. You can go all sorts of places. And you know what? It shouldn't, because in their unions, it wouldn't be.
Right.
But if you can't get 4/5 of your union to even fill out a ballot, which, by the way, shouldn't be mailed and shouldn't be being sent U.S. mail. There's a good example of what I mean, man.
Yeah.
Why are we mailing ballots? But anyway, when you can't get that many people to vote, and only 97 to 98% of your membership doesn't make over $50,000 a year, people very much want to hang on to what they have. And when they know they're in such an extreme minority, it kind of makes logical sense, AJ, that the last thing they want to do is piss off their employer.
Yeah, of course.
And so there you have it. You have a pretty nasty catch-22 quagmire in your hands. Yeah,
there's plenty of people in that 95, 97% who are willing to, walk away. Because I know I've done it myself. Turned down auditions. I've walked out of auditions. I haven't had the unfortunate, or whatever you want to call it, whatever word you want to use to describe it, experience of having to walk off a set, certainly, but I do know plenty of people in that sort of, bottom 95, bottom 97 who would be willing to do it. But the top, 1, 2, 3 right now, it's like there's no incentive other than, I don't know, being a good person or a brother or sister at arms in the unit itself. So this will probably lead to other questions, but right now I feel like it's my last question. I want to say, what's next and what can we do? Like what do you see around the corner now, and maybe a couple of years projected into the future, as far as the union and its relationship to these producing entities, and what can we our listeners do to take? That's been a question we've asked of a lot, because it's election season, so there's a lot of stuff going on, and so the what's next and what can we do question is coming up a lot right now, and it's been great, because as you've been saying, multiple times throughout this interview, there is a 80% apathy level right now. We can just call it what it is, and I don't know. I guess Inside Acting would like to do its small part to try and change that.
Well, honestly, AJ, first of all, it's a terrific last question, and I'm happy to at least give you, my humble opinion. I think one of the things that you see with this union is also just one of the things that you see nationally, and quite frankly, there isn't anything to do about it, because what's going to take care of it is called Father Time, and Father Time is undefeated. We will never probably again have a president of the United States that is as old as our current one, or even if the other person had been elected. There is a generational factor that is simply leaving the planet. And a lot of those people are retired. They have a lot of time. They show up to SAG-AFTRA meetings. A lot of them do aspects in the business that they haven't worked in 20 some years, but they still sit around meetings and make a lot of noise. So the generation that's older than me, and then you come down to someone that's in my generation, and even though technically, sure, I'm old enough to be your father, probably, the reality is that, most of the percentage of my folks don't really stay as connected to technology and don't really look at things. Not everybody, but certainly some do. But sure. we are simply getting older as a country, and we are getting older as a union, and eventually the predominant number of people will be people who have grown up and spent their lives much more around this simple technology platform known as what is. And that alone in itself, AJ, will make a difference. Coupled with that is also something that even the other side, the AMPTP and the commercial producers, they can't stop. And what they can't stop is everything that was once 17 years ago. Oh my God, what is this? It's chaos, crazy town, NASDAQ, holy crap. All of that stuff becomes normalized, and everyone technically catches up. I mean, man, when I was your age, dude, an Oscar award-winning film would come out, and you wouldn't see it on television for 5 or 6 years. Okay, now an Oscar-nominated film is on your plane in 2 months.
Yeah.
So that time contraction is part of what I mean by the normalization of technology. And, I'm not saying doing nothing, but there is just simply a natural evening out of both the age of the demographic who's in charge and also the platform and knowledge that we all have of the metrics of what's going on with entertainment. Those two elements are being normalized. However, there's still a gap that has to be filled between now and when that gets the case, and we can't keep getting so far behind at present. And to me, what has to be done is we have to make it – sorry, I hate to say it, and trust me, my generation, I hate saying this, but we have to make it easier for people in our union to feel connected regardless of how much money they make or how much they work. And when you talk about a generation that you've grown up in, AJ, from all of the the digital social media platforms, I'd like to say that shouldn't be so hard. But I think one of the things you have to start with is you have to stop asking thousands of people who do everything every day on their phone or on their laptop or on their iPad. You have to stop asking them to stop and sit down with a pen to fill out a ballot. And that's metaphorical and transcendent in the sense of that philosophy has to end. So you have to bring everything about this union, everything about the covenants of a contract, and everything about the language of the covenants of those contracts, and everything about what is purposeful, important, and focused. You have to bring that forward into today's language, into an already futuristic concept of where we know things are going, and you have to deliver that on a platform and in a fashion that people respond to it in the way that they're used to responding to everything else in their life. And until you do that, you have an inherent disconnect, which actually, oddly, AJ, keeps people disconnected.
A disconnect that keeps people disconnected. Who knew?
Who knew? So that's kind of what I think,
Yeah, and what can we do? Like what we've had Gabriel Carteris come on. We've had who was the last person that said a lot of the response to this question has just been like get involved, get informed, show up to meetings, show up to subcommittees, show up to et cetera, et cetera. What from the perspective of somebody who's involved with a nonpartisan, independent group working to make things better for the union actors. What can we do? What are some of the action steps? Like, if you've inspired someone, I'm sure there's a listener listening to this fired up right now. Direct their energy.
Well, I'm going to fire it back, AJ. Just, as you're good, and my mutual friend Ben Whitehair would have sat in a room in the Actors Network 7 years ago and heard me say, I'm going to say to every single actor that's listening, hey, why don't you stop? Why don't you sit down? Why don't you think about actually where you believe and want your money to come from as a quote unquote performer who's decided to do this, to try and make a living at it and to try and build a career on it, which means you have a pension like I do, which means one day you have a retirement. That's what your parents did for a job. Well, it can happen in this business too. So sit down and decide, at the most, what are the one or two areas that you actually want to make money in? And then stop and take the time to actually go research what are the contracts in our union that currently govern those one or two ways. And here's a thought, AJ, read them. Why don't you sit down and actually read? This isn't a manual for the remote. It's not a manual for the new toy you bought. This is the foundational benchmark that governs the career you claim you want to make a living at. Because if it's just, hey, what the hell, it's an online profile, let's see what happens and maybe I'll win the lottery, then I'm talking to deaf ears. But if you actually give a crap about trying to actually do something, whether it's your own YouTube channel because you want to glue crap together and sell it online, I don't care what your drive is, but whatever your drive is, if it pertains to being a member of SAG-AFTRA or whatever it's called someday, I still like, we can even do EMT FIP. I'm down with that. I think that SAG-AFTRA can get replaced by EMT FIP. How about you sit down and actually make that decision, what those two, what I would call areas of industry are, and how about you actually read? How about you actually educate yourself on what is currently governing why you can't seem to do better? And once you do that, then start going, hey, well, if I were the person in charge, what would I like to see? Now, that sounds all educational, it sounds boring, and but you know what? To be honest with you, AJ, that's what it takes. It takes actually knowing how something evolves if you're ever going to give a crap or have any effect on it changing. You have to see what is. And last I checked, they haven't torn down Universal Studios. They haven't torn down Sony. Disney doesn't seem to be hurting. It doesn't. And why is that? Entertainment hasn't gone away. We don't have less cable news. We don't have less cable state. We have more. Granted, we may do more jobs now for less money per job and make the same. But the reality is there's a lot of entertainment platform out there required. And while it's morphed and changed a little bit, the core of Hollywood has never been different than it is today. And this is what we as performers have a hard time with, AJ, is that unfortunately when you choose to do entertainment for money, it's about making money. And Hollywood is just about making money. And so how come you aren't? And the inherent answer to that is because we're artists at our choice core that intellectually decide to do something for business or for money, which is why I'm a show business guy. I talk about the business of show all the time. But this is business. And if you don't want to do business, then chances are nothing anyone ever says, AJ, will matter to you. But if you're, to steal a famous line, if you're mad as hell and you're not going to take it anymore, then my suggestion, and that's the only people that we honestly can really speak to, AJ, if you're not going to take it, then you have to start with what matters most to you and go learn every single thing you can about what currently governs your paycheck. And then get involved in terms of making an effort to do that. If you know friends that are stars, if you have people, again, we have to become a very forceful community, but it can't just be a mob. It can't just be someone, barking and complaining. You have to be a forceful mob with data, information and intelligence. So
yeah. So you mean I have to read? Can I get those contracts on my Kindle? Can I?
Yeah. Well, and funny you should say that, because one of the things that has actually been difficult over the last 30 years is that those kinds of things have not been readily available. And that's, the first time somebody kind of tends to go read an ultra low budget contract is when they suddenly realize they want to go try and make their own film.
Yeah.
Then they actually start reading what they have to do as a producer.
Right.
And
right.
It hits them as an actor.
Right.
Every ounce of governance structure and every ounce of our contracts and everything that should be readily available with a click.
Yeah.
Period.
That was going to be my follow-up question is, where do I actually, if I want to go read, the day player, guest star, series regular, those types of contracts, where am I finding these?
It's there. So when you hang up with me, go to SAG website, go to SAG-AFTRA's website now, and just tell me how long it takes you to find it.
I'll set a timer.
No, I'm not even trying to say that in as flip a way as it may sound, but you tell me how long it takes you to find it.
Yeah.
You can't ask people to be engaged and inclusive in what their world is about and then make it hard for them to find the damn door.
Right.
You cannot do that. That is it's a non sequitur. It's military intelligence. It's freezer burn. I mean, it's an oxymoron. You cannot do that. Why do we have sagindy.org for so long? Why when they came up with modified agreements, did we have to have a different website to address our modified agreements? I mean, holy clown lips. Sorry, everybody's clown lips. This recently came up at one of our meetings when a casting director said out loud, why in the world does it take us in 2017 24 to 48 hours to be able to clear an actor as to what their status is? If a casting director is doing a non-union spot, why should I have to wonder whether or not they're coming in working off the card? If we, as a casting people, don't even want to see FICOR people, why should I not be able to quickly, easily tap on something and determine that they're FICOR? It's 2017. Well, the casting director is right. So you can't keep putting up firewalls to make stuff that's simple. And that's one of the challenges that I'm sharing with you that I have complained about over the last 2.5 decades. That stuff cannot be difficult. You cannot make it hard for someone to want to learn, and for someone, there's a ton of subcommittees. You're right, man. There's a whole bunch of them. You can go volunteer your time and blah, 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 but do you know what you're even stepping into?
Yeah, why you're there, what you're working on.
Yeah, what you're working on. What's the language? From where are we starting? It should be hey, we're doing the LA Marathon. We're not really sure where the start line is. Huh? It's like, you got to know where the start line is.
Yeah.
Really simple. You start right here. So there's a level of that. Again, it doesn't mean that I excuse people when things aren't simple. But in today's world, from like you said, I got to go read. Yeah, that actually should be really simple. That should be a really easy link.
Yeah. That
I don't have to go through 17 spider webs and 12 nav clicks to figure out how the hell to drill down to find that. That shouldn't be difficult, AJ. And that's part of my challenge with my own union. But I still would say from an inspiration standpoint, really pick out the 1 or 2 areas of industry you want to make money at and go educate yourself on what's currently governing you making that money and start there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic advice. I mean, I don't know that even outside of the context of the conversation that we've had today, I don't know that anybody's ever said that on the podcast. I'm trying to think of a guest who might have said, like, go educate yourself specifically on, what the, piece of paper that says how much money you're going to make says. I mean, anyway, so thank you for that. And thank you for all of this. This has been so educational, inspirational. It's been, I've learned so much, and I hope our listeners have too. If people want to find out more about union working and get involved with you guys or attend a meeting or ask questions, that kind of thing, are you on the sort of social media train? I'm assuming you guys have a website. How do people find out about the group?
Oh, sure. The website, of course, is unionworking.com. Follow us on Twitter at unionworking. And we also have a YouTube channel as well, because we have done a ton of both scripted, funny videos about being a union member, along with a ton of my union story videos. I wrote and directed one called Someday, because someday, AJ, my age to your age is coming. And so someday we'll get here sooner than you think. So we have a YouTube channel. So there are a lot of ways to be involved. And then absolutely you can show up to a monthly meeting. Our September meeting, I believe, is going to be around the 28th, but it will be confirmed on our website when it is up, for sure.
Awesome.
We're also on Facebook as well, Union Working, on groups, Union Working.
Great. We will link to all of that in the show notes for this episode, so no worries there. People will definitely be able to find it through us. Thank you again, Kevin. So informative, and I'm really excited that there's someone out there, some ones, you and the group you're working with, fighting for these changes and moving us as working union performers forward.
My pleasure, brother, and I'm happy to come on anytime you want me.
Everybody, welcome back from AJ's chat with Kevin. Man, it was such a joy to have him on the podcast, and the first time around, all the way back in, was it episodes 95 and 96? I think. I mean, it was a while back.
Double digits.
Yeah, and now he's here again, and he's just dropping all new sorts of new knowledge bombs. And if anything, and I sort of talked about this briefly in the last episode, it's so empowering and important, I think, to see, at least in our minds, to see this industry through the lens of the union and all the work that they do and all the shoulders that they're standing on, of all the actors throughout the years who have fought so hard to get fair working conditions and fair rights. And he's right. There's a lot of slack that needs to be picked up in the technical aspect of things.
Yeah.
But they're out there fighting the good fight for us. And he said something in part one about, actors working off their card. And I know that's so tempting if you're a union, and how there's so many non-union jobs now. They far outnumber the union jobs. It's so tempting to be like, look, I just need money. I just want to work. I'll do it. Nobody has to know. I just want to kind of presence that, because I think it's so important we keep that conversation, this conversation with Kevin, top of mind when we go out to our next audition, when we book our next job, the next time we set foot on a set. I think it's important to remember that, man, this is a big part of what we do. And it's really, man, if only 20%, like you said in part one, if only 20% of our membership is voting in the elections, that's something that needs to change. So I'm glad that we can at least do a small part of that here on the show by featuring this conversation. So
and Gabrielle Carteris talked about it when we interviewed her. She said I have probably turned down $1 million or something crazy like that. She's added it up. I can't remember the number she threw out there. It was like $1 million or $1.5 million or something ridiculous of work that she has turned down over the years because it was non-union, and they were very. She said a lot of them were very clandestine about it. They knew. They were like, yeah, come on, sort of like this back. We're going to pay you like a lot of money to work off the card. I don't know. Just it's crazy. It's a tough. I mean, we're already like challenged to make it work, as it were, between our jobby jobs, our thrival jobs, and our dream job. It's already a challenge. So I get the temptation. But hopefully people listening to this this two-parter and Gabrielle's interview as well will sort of understand why that's not the greatest idea.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to thinking of the big picture and what kind of future we want to be creating. Everything counts. Every little action counts. Our friend Tom is so fond of saying all life is practice. And, that's so true. Everything you do is just reinforcing something. So are you reinforcing integrity, or are you reinforcing something not quite as noble. And again, it's tough. It's a rock and a hard place. You know, you've got to make those judgment calls. But, you know, if you're not cool with that situation, then get involved. Get involved. And also, there's lots of ways to make non-union projects union and whatnot. So anyway, thank you, Kevin, for coming on again. Thank you, AJ, for making it happen. Thank you, Jen, for helping facilitate that. Proud to have this one out in the world. Let's talk about picks of the week, shall we?
Let's do it. Yes, sir. What is your pick of the week, my friend?
I have two. I'm going to mention one really quickly because it's pertinent to what we were talking about earlier, and then I'll mention the second one, which is my main one. So the first one is a book called The Shallows: What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains.
Oh, God.
By Nicholas Carr. And
that's a telling title.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can tell what the book's about by the title right there. So essentially, we are living in an age of distraction, and most people who have even a sort of layman's understanding of how the brain works understand that it's a use it or lose it, you know, proposition, that we get better at the things we practice at, and the things we don't practice at, we lose the ability to do. And what's really interesting and slightly disturbing, to be honest, is how distractible the internet and social media and cell phones are training us to be. We are becoming so much more adept as human beings in first world cultures like ours at jumping from one thing to another, jumping from this information feed to that information feed, and quickly processing little tiny bits of information and just sort of pocketing them away in our brains and our experience. But when it comes time to do deep work, or to have a conversation with another human being that lasts longer than 2 minutes, or to read a book and absorb information in a thorough way, we become less and less able to do that. And it's a real problem. If you look at it from a neurological perspective, literally the physical terrain of our brains and our synapses is changing, and it's more difficult to get that back than people might realize. You can, in the book, he doesn't really make a case for, like, you know, retraining your brain to do deep thinking and deep work and have deep conversations. He doesn't paint the brightest picture of that, but I do believe, maybe this is just the sort of athlete in me talking, but I believe that if you practice at anything, you can get better at it and eventually become world class. But when it comes to sort of the neuroplasticity of the brain, it's a scary thing that's happening right now, especially with, you know, people who are raised on this technology. And I'm sure you've had the experience, AJ, of talking to somebody, and within just a few minutes of the conversation, maybe not a few minutes, maybe just a few seconds, you see their eyes just go somewhere else. Or you see their mind just go somewhere else, and they're looking at you and they're nodding, but you can tell they're already off onto some other thing. And I have to say, man, it seems to be happening to me more and more. Now, maybe I'm just a boring person, but I do feel like there's a connection there, that more and more people seem to be distracted and bored by things that require mental focus. Myself included. I find I have more and more difficulty reading a novel, like reading a work of fiction. And when it comes to long reads on the internet, more and more, I read the first few paragraphs, and I'm like, oh, this is taking forever, and I just want to skim around and skip to the good stuff, right? Like, that's not good. I think there's something to be said for efficiency, but I think we should also all be able to have, an in-depth discourse about ideas and be able to take in information without so much resistance, because we're not stimulated all the time, if that makes sense. And what was really interesting that was highlighted in the book, and this will be the last thing I'll say about it, is that there's a lot of studies, a lot of science coming out now that shows that this lack of attention, like our attention muscle weakening, is also directly correlated to our empathy muscle. So the less able we are to focus on things for longer periods of time, also, like in tandem with that, the less able we are to empathize with other people. So basically, the less in touch we are with the suffering in the world and the suffering of other people. And I mean, if you thought the other thing was a problem, like let's talk about that. Let's talk about, like, we're losing our ability to empathize with other creatures and other human beings because of Instagram. Like, I think Instagram's great, and there's definitely a time and place, but man, think about that, you know? I don't know if have you experienced this, AJ, in your own experience? Have you clocked this and caught yourself and been like, wow, my brain is just scattered. Has that happened to you?
Sorry, dude. I wasn't listening. I was playing Candy Crush.
Touche. I did lose about 70% of our listeners, I know.
No, it was great. I actually, and I'm like, why do you have 2 picks of the week? Like, this is so interesting. We're talking about this. This is amazing. Like, this should just be your pick of the week. I was not playing Candy Crush. I was actually very tuned in. And also, yeah, I've not only clocked it in other people, and mostly it's the phone thing, not necessarily them like sort of wandering off with their eyes, but mostly the checking of the phone or distraction of some other kind. Yeah, I've definitely noticed it in myself. And I have you and Jasmine and some other very close friends to thank for like getting me, sort of doing that less. I know it was like a much bigger issue for me in the past, but I did. It's funny. I didn't necessarily put words on it the way that you just did, but I do know that there was a disconnect occurring with the sort of the empathy thing. That's a really I mean, it makes complete sense hearing you say it. I had never put words on it, but thinking back to the time when I was the most easily distracted by my phone, or the most easily taken away by technology or social media or what have you, in those times, I would venture to guess, or pretty well be able to say with a lot of confidence, that I was in some of my least empathetic mode of my life. Now that also had a lot to do with other things that were going on in my life, and things that were impacting me in a traumatic or emotional way. But the link, that doesn't mean the link wasn't there or isn't there. So that's fascinating, but not surprising. Put it that way.
Yeah, I think this is especially pertinent for artists and actors. There's such an emphasis on Instagram and social media followings and things like that these days. And, it's important. And I think that there's a time and a place. I'm not demonizing the technology. I'm just saying it's worth clocking how this technology is designed to hijack our attention without our consent, and then completely rewire our brains in a relatively short period of time. And so that we step on stage, or we step into a scene, or we step in front of a camera to do a scene, and all of a sudden we don't care about the other person. We can't identify with the emotions, or we can't listen to what they're saying because our brain keeps wandering off looking for the next shiny object, because that's sort of what we've been trained to do. I don't want to sound like a jaded old man here, but I think there's something really, really important to look at when it comes to this. And I listened to the audiobook of this book, and it was great. And I got it from the library, so check it out. Support your public library. Use the Overdrive app to download audiobooks for free. But I have to say, it really baked my noodle. And I have been very, very mindful recently about how I engage with my technology. And I've been catching myself more and more going, wow, they just hijacked my entire brain for a half hour. I didn't give them permission to do that. It just happened. And so I've been really working to like retrain my brain. It's a lot harder to dig yourself out of that than it is to fall into it.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about, because you said you don't want to demonize the technology, but just, ask people or invite people to sort of notice themselves doing it. What you're talking about is self-awareness, which is so important. That was sort of, it was probably one of my biggest lessons or takeaways of 2016. I think I talked about it extensively in the sort of yearly review and renew. So much of our growth as humans has to do with self-awareness and vulnerability. I feel like those are like two keys to life, to empathy, to connecting with other people, to art, to creativity, to growing, to becoming a better person. And it's funny too, because they're actually the exact opposite of narcissism.
Yeah.
People with NPD, like our president, they lack those things. They lack vulnerability. They lack self-awareness. They lack empathy.
What is NPD? Narcissistic personality
disorder. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's the biggest narcissist that I've ever encountered.
That the world has ever encountered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anyway.
Anyway, so that's my pick of the week. The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains by Nicholas Carr. I listened to the audiobook. Check it out. I said I was going to talk about it briefly and then go on to my real pick, and I feel like I just spent 7 minutes talking about this book. So
yeah.
I want to actually then...
That is your pick of the week.
That's my pick of the week. I'm going to shelve my other pick of the week, which is another book that had a profound impact on me. And I'll mention it next episode when we'll talk about a listener pick as well, so that they kind of tie in nicely together. So that's my pick of the week, The Shallows. What is your pick of the week? I've never heard of this.
My pick of the week is going to seem shallow after that.
I saw a .com after it, and I was like, uh-oh. I set him up for...
Yeah, you like this deep conversation, don't get distracted. And I'm like, here's a distraction. Yeah. Go online and buy stuff. Be a good consumer. I don't know what that was about. It's a website called massdrop.com. It is the very simple concept. Basically, what this company or website does is they gather up community interest in a particular product, and then if enough people are interested and committed to buying that product, they'll go to the seller and say, hey, I've got 100 people, 50 people, 200 people, whatever it is, interested in buying your product. Would you consider cutting us a deal, giving us a discount on it? Sometimes it's not as good as what you might find on Amazon Prime or something like that, but every once in a while there's some great stuff on there, and it's cool because they break it down by interests or passions or communities. So a lot of things I have found for ultralight backpacking, ding, 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 have been on this website. But some of the other communities are like men's and women's apparel, men's and women's accessories, outdoors, photography, tech, ultralight I already mentioned, and many more. So you can basically join in these communities, and then those communities are sort of, it's like a product will drop inside of one of those communities, and it's brought to you by, the backpacking community, or brought to you by the outdoors community, and then it will be some product that usually costs whatever $200, and they've got it on there for $70 or something like that, because enough people have sort of gotten together to say, yes, we want this thing, and so they'll get basically a deal on it. So this was a sort of piggyback to last week's pick of the week, or picks of the week for me, as I get more and more into this whole ultralight backpacking through hiking thing. This is another thing that I've used to kind of support that new passion. So I thought it would be cool to share with our community.
Wow. Two things. I'm looking at this, and this is pretty cool. Wow. Awesome pick. And number two, when are we going camping again?
Oh, yeah, buddy.
I'm ready. I'm itching. So that is The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains by Nicholas Carr. And massdrop.com for all your community crowdsourced product needs, I guess. It looks pretty cool. I'll have to poke around, but I like the community aspect of it. I'm big on community, and I think the internet is great for that.
Yep.
Anything else before we rock out of here?
No, just as Trevor mentioned, we do have a couple of listener picks. We will get to those in the next couple of episodes, so stay tuned for that. Other than that, today's episode of Inside Acting was produced and hosted by yours truly, AJ Meyer, and of course, Trevor Algett. Jen Levin is our production coordinator. Gadali Gubarek is our marketing and web director. Deborah Smith is our community manager. Grace Gordon is our director of public relations. And Fern Lim designed our logo. Trevor Algett edited and mixed today's episode and composed our theme and interview music.
Did you guys know that we have a weekly email dispatch that we send out every time we publish a new episode? We do. We certainly do. You can sign up for it over at our website, insideacting.net, where you can also listen to all of our episodes, all 292 of them if you include this one, including Kevin's first appearance on the podcast. Also, we're all over social media: Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, LinkedIn, YouTube's, you name it. We've got an Inside Acting account on it. So if you've got a minute, check us out there, follow us, interact with us there. We love that stuff. And iTunes is really the most important thing. That's where this podcast basically mostly lives in terms of internet presence. And your reviews there means so much to us. So if you could hop over there, if you enjoy the show and you'd like to leave us a little bit of support and love, leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes really goes a long way for the various algorithms and whatnot that are at work behind the scenes, making the podcast visible and suggestible to people. So a minute to leave us a positive review on iTunes helps a lot. Please do that if you feel so inclined.
Yay! Special thanks to our sponsors, Rehearsal Pro and VO2GoGo.com. And thanks to you, our listeners. As Trevor said, you can visit our website to do things like, get the newsletter, find all those social media links that he was mentioning. But also, another way to support the podcast, the continued production of the podcast, is with either a one-time financial contribution or an ongoing contribution as part of our membership. That's all over at our website, insideacting.net, to learn more and show us some of that financial love as well as the review love.
Two kinds of love for episode 292, part 2, with Kevin West's second time on the podcast. Oh man, lots of twos. Two second times a charm. I don't know. Thanks guys for listening. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, engage intentionally.